بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد. As mentioned earlier, we're moving on to the principle Al-Asl fi al-Ibadah al-Tahrim, that the fundamental principle as pertains to or concerning worship is prohibition. Now, when stepping into Salafi circles, I believe that this particular principle is well known to us. But as I stated earlier, when going on various different social media platforms, I found that this particular principle is not too well known to the Muslims in general. And so I like to go through this particular principle and be as detailed as possible as it relates to its intent and its intent and things that are connected to it, inshallah. When starting this particular topic, then we want to take a look at the definition of al-ibadah, which is normally translated as worship. As we know in the Arabic language, words could take one of three meanings. Either a linguistic meaning a meaning that is found within the language of the Arab. Two, a shar'i meaning, what is intended by that is a meaning that is directly connected to al-Islam. As after the advent of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, some words, their meanings, there was additions to their meanings, such as as-salat, for instance. In the language of the Arab, as-salat literally is synonymous with ad-du'a, supplication or invocation. But in Islam, it takes a slightly different meaning. We translate it as prayer, but it is an act of worship that is devoted to Allah, that is begun with the takbir and ends with the taslim, and is an act of worship that consists of varying acts of worship connected to the heart, the tongue, and the body limbs. That's a general definition of it, and then we can start getting into the specifics of what's connected to the heart, what's connected to the tongue, what's connected to the body limbs. The point is as-salat took a different meaning after the advent of the Prophet ﷺ. There was an additional meaning that was added to it, an Islamic technical meaning. And then the third is a meaning that is considered urfi, from the customs of the Arab. So it's possible for a word to have one of these three meanings or more than one. It could take all three meanings. You can have a word that has a linguistic meaning, a shar'i meaning, and a urfi meaning, or a word that just has a linguistic meaning, or a word that has a linguistic meaning and a Islamic technical meaning. When it comes to al-ibadah, there is a technical meaning and the meaning from the language. As it relates to the meaning from the language, then what is intended by it is at-tadallul and al-khudu', being lowering oneself, humbling oneself, and submitting or yielding oneself to whatever or whoever it is that one is worshiping. Al-Imam Ismail ibn Hamad al-Jawhari, he stated, al-ibadah at-ta'a wa asl al-ubudiyya al-khudu' wa-dhil. He stated that worship or al-ibadah, it is obedience. It is obedience. And the foundation of al-ubudiyya, which is normally translated as servitude, it is Yani surrenderance and one being humbled or lowering oneself. Lowering oneself. Again, this is as it relates to the language. Al-Imam al-Asfahani, he said, Al-Ubudiyya idhar al-tadhallul. Wal-ibada ablaghu minha liannaha ghayat al-tadhallul. He states, Al-Ubudiyya, again, translated as servitude. It is manifesting one's, manifesting humility, being humbled, a manifestation of being humble to something or someone. And al-ibadah, yani, is more extensive than this because it is from the utmost of being low, being humble to someone or something. It's more, yani, I don't want to say, I guess more extreme for lack of better translation. But this is as it relates to the language. And this is what will be applied if somebody is worshiping some idol other than Allah. One is humbling themselves to it, lowering themselves to that thing, submitting to that thing. When a person worships whatever it is that they may be worshiping throughout the society, they're lowering themselves and humbling themselves to that thing, surrendering themselves to that thing. As for the Islamic technical definition, then Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, or rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, states in his book, Al-Ubudiyya, Al-Ibadah al-Ma'mur biha tatadammanu ma'na al-dhil wa ma'na al-hub. The ibadah that is commanded. And what ibadah is commanded? Who is the ma'bud? Who is the deity that we're commanded to direct worship to? Allah wa ta'ala. So he's stating that the worship that is commanded, yani that is directed to Allah, it is inclusive, or it includes the meaning of dhil, being low, lowering oneself or humbling oneself, and is also is inclusive of the meaning of hub, or love. فهي تتضمن غاية الذل لله بغاية المحبة له. So he continues, so it includes the utmost of one lowering or humbling himself to Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and likewise the utmost of love for him, the utmost of love for Allah. This is what we're referring to when we say al-ibadah, or worship. He continues, وَمَنْ خَضَعَ الْإِنسَانِ مَعَ بُغْضِهِ لَهُ لَا يَكُونُ عَابِدًا لَهُ. So then he states, so if a person submits or surrenders himself to something else, along with having hatred for that person or thing, then he cannot be considered a servant of that thing, one who is worshiping it. And if we wanted to give an example, it's like people that are locked up in prison. They are surrendering to the state and surrendering to the institution, but they don't love that submittance to that thing, regardless if it's to the institution or the corrections officers that are in. They don't love having to submit themselves to that, so that cannot be considered. They cannot be considered worshipers of that thing. They don't love to be told when to use the bathroom, for instance, even though they're surrendering to the institution or the state or whatever the case may be. He continues, وَلَوْ أَحَبَّ شَيْئًا وَلَمْ يَخْضُعْ لَهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ عَابِدًا لَهُ. And if an individual loves a thing, however, he does not submit to that thing, then he cannot be considered a servant of that thing, meaning a servant or one who is worshiping that thing. كما يحب الرجل ولده وصديقه. And that is just like a man who loves his child. I'm pretty sure every person in here that has children loves their children, but we don't submit or surrender to our children. We don't humble or lower ourselves to our children to the point where the child comes in the room and says, "Daddy, I said clean my room." And we submit to it. We don't do that. So in that case, just because you merely love someone doesn't mean that you're a servant to that person. Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Taymiyyah, rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, he had another definition too, and these definitions don't contradict one another. They actually beautify and expound on what worship is. Another definition he used, he stated, "Ismun jami'un likulli ma yuhibbuhu Allah wa yardah min al-aqwal wal a'mal al-zahira wal batina." He states that worship, it is a word, an all-inclusive word. It is a word that is inclusive of all of that which Allah Ta'ala loves and is pleased with, from statements and actions that are hidden and apparent. So when an individual, then he has another definition. Al-ibadah hiya at-ta'a bimtithal ma amara Allah ala al-sinat al-rusul. That al-ibadah, it is obedience and surrendering to what he commanded upon the tongues of the messengers. Meaning that which the messengers came with, we know that it was from Allah. These commands and these prohibitions, it was from Allah. So when one surrenders to what the prophets and messengers came with, that which was revealed to them from Allah Ta'ala, then we know that the individual is worshiping Allah Ta'ala. And of course, this has that. It has that component of dhil, of humility, being humbled or lowering oneself, and it has that component of love. So this is what is intended when we make the statement, the fundamental principle as it relates to al-ibadah. This is what we intend by ibadah. The fundamental principle as it relates to al-ibadah is prohibition. It's prohibition. Now, when we talk about al-ibadah, or worship, then we know that al-ibadah has aqsam, or categories. 5 categories to be exact. The first of the categories is al-i'tiqadiyya. Al-ibadah al-i'tiqadiyya. Worship that is directly connected to one's creed and or belief. As we are commanded to believe in Allah Ta'ala a certain way, and belief in Him in that certain way is worship. Why? Because it's belief in that which is unseen. And the only way that we determine what's true and what's false from what is unseen is if Allah Ta'ala reveals it to us. So we believe that Allah Ta'ala. Questions after the dars, inshallah. We want to stick to the etiquettes of the majlis, the circles of knowledge. So we believe that Allah Ta'ala is living because He says He's living. We believe that He's all-knowing because He says He's all-knowing, and that He has the most complete and perfect attributes and actions. But we also believe that they're nowhere in comparison and or equal to any aspect of the creation. We believe that the qualities of Allah Ta'ala differ, as they are what you call ma'anawi, qualities that are ma'anawi, and qualities that are khabari. We believe this. So when Allah, an example of a sifa min sifat Allah al-khabariyya would be the face of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. We believe that Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala has a face, and we believe that what is literally intended by face, for instance. However, when it comes to the creation, there is no similarity in the specific reality of that face along with the creation. The similarity is only in the word face and what it generally indicates. But the specific reality, there is no comparison. There is no equal. To believe this is that which is found in the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. So when one believes this, he is worshiping Allah from the perspective of creed. But if one comes and he says that Allah was a man, he appeared in the form of a man in the 1930s, and he gave a messengership to Fulan ibn Fulan, who lived in the 1930s, who died, and now he's in a spaceship with Allah, and thus forth and so on. And this type of belief clashes and conflicts with what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala instructs us with. So that's the first type. The second type of ibadah is lafdhiya or qawliya. Yani the acts of worship that are directly connected to the tongue or the utterances. Like the adhkar. Like the statement Alhamdulillah. The statement La ilaha illallah. The statement Subhanallah, and thus forth and so on. The statement Astaghfirullah. These are acts of worship directly connected to the tongue, the utterances of the tongue. The third category is Al-Ibadah Al-Badaniyya. The acts of worship that are directly connected to the body limbs. From the varying movements in the salawat. From As-Siyam, because this is directly connected to the body limbs. From Al-Hajj, the ritual acts that have to be performed during the Hajj. From circling the Kaaba and the running between Safa and Marwa. And other than that, Al-Jihad. And other than that, all of these are acts of worship directly connected to the body limbs. Then you have what is called Al-Ibadah Al-Maliyya. The acts of worship that are directly connected to one's wealth, from the paying of the zakat at the head of it, and as-sadaqah, given in charity. And we have al-ibadah at-tarqiyya, that which the individual abandons for the sake of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, from that which is considered from amongst the muharramat and the makruhat, those things that are prohibited, or those things that take the ruling of being hated. They're abandoned in order to be brought closer to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So these are the categories of worship. And as we know, this worship or worship of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is the very reason why man and jinn, or men and jinn, were created. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala states, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created jinn and mankind except but to worship me. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He states, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. And indeed we have sent to every nation a messenger proclaiming, worship Allah alone and avoid the taghut. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ مِنْ رَسُولٍ إِلَّا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِ أَنَّهُ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنَا فَاعْبُدُونَ. And Allah states, and we have not sent before you a messenger except that we revealed to him that there is no deity worthy of worship in truth except me, so worship me. There's no deity worthy of worship in truth except me, so worship me. All of these evidences are showing that the point or the purpose for the creating of mankind and the purpose for the sending of the messengers, the prophets and messengers, the reason for the revealing of the books, and thus forth and so on, all of this was for the purpose of the upholding and the embarking on worship to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala alone and to no one else. And to no one else. So the point of this particular principle, the meaning of this particular principle, is that for the one that has been burdened with accountability, the mukallaf, the one who is burdened with accountability in front of Allah, that it is not permissible for him to put forward any act of worship. It is not permissible for him to put forth any act of worship until he first knows that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has legislated that act of worship. And that is because, one, that Allah legislated that act of worship, that's one. And then two, that the way that act of worship is performed, that likewise Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has sanctioned that act of worship is performed in that manner. This is, in a nutshell, what is understood by this principle, that fundamentally all acts of worship are prohibited. Unless you find something from the text that is illustrating the enactment of it, that's illustrating the enactment of that act of worship. The evidence for this are in abundance. We have some statements of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala that point to or indicate this principle, meaning these statements of Allah is what this principle was derived from. From them is the statement of Allah, He says, "Ittabi'u ma unzila min rabbikum wa la tattabi'u min dunihi awliya." And follow that which your Lord has sent down. Unduru. Yani, reflect off this, ya ibadallah. Don't just come and do as it relates to worship. On the contrary, there is a clear command. Follow what your Lord has sent down. And do not follow other than that is found with the awliya. Al-Imam al-Shawkani, wa rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, he has some statements as it relates to this particular ayah in his explanation to the Quran, Fathul Qadir. He states, "Naha lil umma an yattabi'u awliya min dunillah. يَعْبُدُونَهُمْ وَيَجْعَلُونَهُمْ شُرَكَاءَ لِلَّهِ." He states that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has prohibited for this ummah that they follow the awliya. And what is intended here is anyone or anything that's going to lead you away from Allah. That you pursue or follow anyone from amongst the people or anything besides Allah, worshiping them and making them a partner with Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. And then he continues, he states something profound. فَالضَّمِيرُ عَلَى هَذَا فِي مِن دُونِهِ يَرْجِعْ إِلَى رَبِّ. And the pronoun that is found within the phrase min dunihi, in the statement, ittabi'u, yani ittabi'u ma unzila ilaykum min rabbikum wa la tattabi'u min dunihi. That min dunihi, that pronoun he, this is what he's referring to. And do not be followed, yani besides him, awliya. He says that pronoun goes back to Lord. In the verse, Ittabi'u ma unzila ilaykum min rabbikum. Follow what your Lord has revealed to you. The pronoun is going back to Lord. In that context, it will be translated min duni, from besides him. Right? It will be kind of translated as besides him, awliya. But then it continues. وَيَجُوزُ, and it is permissible. And يَرْجِعَ إِلَى مَا, it is permissible that this pronoun returns back to ma in that statement, which is being translated as whatever. Meaning, اتَّبِعُوا مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ, and follow whatsoever your Lord has revealed to you. He's saying it's permissible that the pronoun is going back to that. And thus, if it's going back to that, it will be translated as, and do not follow what is besides it. It being whatsoever he has revealed. Right? Everybody with me, huh? So he continues, إِلَى مَا فِي مَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْكُمْ. So now he's stating, so if it goes back to that, to ma or whatsoever, then what is intended? لَا تَتَّبِعُوا مِن دُونِ كِتَابِ اللَّهِ أَوْلِيَاءَ تُقَلِّدُونَهُمْ فِي دِينِكُمْ. Do not follow what is besides or what is other than the book of Allah. These other things, these awliya, anything that's besides the book of Allah, blind following them as it pertains to your deen. Blind following them as it pertains to your deen. كما كان يفعله أهل الجاهلية من طاعة أو رؤساء فيما يحللونه لهم ويحرمونه عليهم. Just like the people of Jahiliyyah did as it relates to obedience to their leaders. The people of Jahiliyyah, like my parents prior to their Islam, who were followers of Elijah Poole, the man who claimed to be a messenger of Allah. Those that were followers of Elijah Poole were following other than the book of Allah. Other than the book of Allah. And as a result, he made permissible for them what he wanted to make permissible for them. And he made haram for them what he wanted to make haram for them. My understanding, he made peanuts haram for them. It takes 5 years off your life. I believe that statement is found in How to Eat to Live. For the elders that may have went through that, then you guys know that. The point is, if the pronoun goes back to ma, then this is what it's referring to. The book of Allah. The sunnah of the messenger of Allah. Because this is a part of whatsoever your Lord has revealed. Whatsoever your Lord has revealed. From the evidences of this particular principle is the statement of Allah, أَمْ لَهُمْ شُرَكَاءُ شَرَعُوا لَهُمْ مِنَ الدِّينِ مَا لَمْ يَأْذَنْ بِهِ اللَّهُ or بِهِ اللَّهُ. Or is there for them partners that legislate for them from the deen that which Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has not given any authority? Because if the prohibition, if the fundamental principle as it relates to worship is prohibition, and then somebody comes and he says, no, do this, do that, do this, do that. And it's outside of what Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala reveals. And in this instance, a person is becoming an equal with Allah as it relates to tashri'ah, as it relates to legislating. Now he's inventing and legislating for you a deen that Allah has not given any authority. Because the asl al-ibadah is prohibition. From the statements that indicate this is the statement of Allah, ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيَّةٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْرِ فَاتَّبِعْهَا وَلَا تَتَّبِعْ أَهْوَاءَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. The statement of Allah in Surah Al-Jathiyah, verse 18, He states, then we have placed you upon a legislation from our command. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاكَ عَلَى شَرِيَّةٍ مِّنَ الْأَمْرِ فَاتَّبِعْهَا. I don't know if I said it right the first time. We have placed you upon a legislation from our command, so follow it. And do not follow the desires of those that know not. Because the only thing that's lawful for you, the only exception, is what He has revealed, the Sharia. Everything else, the asl is prohibition. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala states in Surah Al-Kahf, verses 103 and 104, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. Shall we not say, He's commanding the Prophet to say to the people, shall I not inform you, shall we not inform you of those who are the most lost as it relates to actions? الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيَهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. They are those that have wasted their efforts in this worldly life, but they assume that they are doing good. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. There are those that have wasted their efforts in this worldly life, but they assume that they are doing good because they didn't stick to this principle. All things were prohibited except what was specifically legislated. If we approach the affair of ibadah in the opposite, everything is lawful to approve or prohibited, then we will be from amongst those that are the most lost as it relates to our actions, as Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is displaying in this particular verse. And from the proofs of this particular principle, Allah states, الْيَوْمَ أَكْمَلْتُ لَكُمْ دِينَكُمْ وَأَتْمَمْتُ عَلَيْكُمْ نِعْمَتِي وَرَضِيتُ لَكُمُ الْإِسْلَامَ دِينًا. This day I have perfected for you your deen. And I've completed my favor upon you, and I'm pleased for you all, I'm pleased as Islam for you all as a deen. And there are many varying ways of life that are present and prevalent amongst the people today. But there is only one that Allah has completed, one that Allah has perfected, one that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala is pleased with, and that is al-Islam. That is al-Islam. Likewise, we have in the Sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam a authentic narration that is muttafaqun alayh. Everybody knows what muttafaqun alayh means, correct? What does muttafaqun alayh mean? Everybody doesn't know. Muttafaqun alayh is when a hadith is found in both Bukhari and Muslim. Right? That's what's intended by muttafaqun alayh. It's literally translated as agreed upon, but that's the intent. Both Al-Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim collected it in their authentic collections. Right? Hey, look at that. So we have an authentic narration. It's upon the authority of Aisha, and this expression I'm using is found in the Sahih of Imam Muslim. With the Prophet ﷺ, he stated, "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad." Whoever does an action that is not in accordance with our affair or our command, then it is rejected. It is rejected. This particular hadith is from the clearest of proofs that support this principle, the fundamental principle as it relates to al-ibadah or worship is prohibition. It's prohibition. Now, Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he has some statements concerning this particular narration. bringing forth or extracting benefits from this particular narration. So it says, فَالْمَعْنَى إِذَنْ أَنَّ مَنْ كَانَ عَمَلُهُ خَارِجًا عَنِ الشَّرْعِ لَيْسَ مُتَقَيِّدًا بِالشَّرْعِ فَهُوَ مَرْدُودٌ. He states that the meaning in this case is that whoever's actions are outside of the Islamic legislation, and it's not confined to or restricted to the Islamic legislation, then without a doubt that action is rejected. That action is rejected. وَقَوْلُهُ لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam statement, لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا, it is not in accordance with our affair or our command. He states that إشارة إلى أن أعمال العالمين كلهم ينبغي أن تكون تحت أحكام الشريعة. He said that it is an indication that points to the fact that all actions of the people that exist, jinn and men, all of their actions, that it is incumbent that it be considered to be under the rulings of the Islamic Sharia. Meaning, if it's not coming under it, meaning it's legislated by the Islamic Sharia. Meaning that's what's intended by it comes under it. Meaning it was legislated by the text. فتكون أحكام الشريعة حاكمة عليها بأمرها ونهيها. And thus, the Islamic, the Sharia and its rulings is a judge upon that action. Its commands and its prohibitions. They're like a judge as it relates to that to those actions. Should you implement it or should you leave it off? He continues, so whoever's actions run in concordance with the Islamic legislative ruling, it is in accordance with it, and that action is accepted. It is in harmony with the Islamic legislation and its rulings, that action is accepted. وَمَنْ كَانَ خَارِجًا عَنْ ذَلِكَ فَهُوَ مَرْدُودٌ. But whatever is outside of that, then that action is rejected. In this particular narration, the scholars of Al-Islam, past and present, magnified the importance of this legislation. And that is because, like when looking at this particular narration, it is the foundation in determining if an action is rejected. It is the foundation in determining if an action is rejected or accepted. If it is, regardless if it may be some newly invented matter, an innovation, regardless if it's from the customs of the people that contradict the Islamic Sharia, or something that they've come up with that is considered to be worship. In this particular narration establishes the mode or the method in determining what is to be rejected and what is to be accepted. So without a doubt, as the ulama use this particular narration as a proof or a point for the rejection of bid'ah or innovation, anything that is not directly in accordance with the command or the affair of the Prophet ﷺ, especially after the passing of the Prophet ﷺ, will be considered a bid'ah, and this is one of the main proofs that's used to reject bid'ah or innovation in the religion. When looking at and understanding this, then one thing should come to mind. What is a bid'ah, or what is intended by bid'ah, which is normally translated as innovation? And this is something that, although it's well known in Salafi circles, once you go outside of the circles of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, you still find confusion amongst the people. That's why you'll find a person saying something like, What's the proof that I can't do this? What's the proof that I can't do this? Well, the proof that you can't do this is every ayat that I just presented in this talk and this hadith. Because they all point to the fact that the fundamental principle concerning worship is prohibition. So you have to have a text. What does the statement "Ittabi'u ma unzila ilaykum min rabbikum"? What does that mean? And follow whatsoever your Lord has revealed. What does that mean? Is that meaningless? What do you mean? What's the proof that you can't do this? Your Lord says, follow what He has revealed. Where in the text do we find the Lord of all that exists saying to do this? But the point that I'm making is that the fact that you have people, Muslims today, that will make a statement like that, what's the proof that I can't do this? Shows us that the term bid'ah is not understood to a degree outside of the circles of Ahlul Sunnah. Outside of the circles of Ahlul Sunnah, like it should be understood. And so when looking at bid'ah, then I want to take a look at some of the statements of the A'imma, of the Imams of the religion. Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali, he stated, وَالْمُرَادْ بِالْبِدَعِ كُلُّ مَا أَحْدَثَ مِمَّا لَا أَصْلَ لَهُ فِي الشَّرِيعَةِ يَدُلُّ عَلَيْهِ. He stated, what is intended by bid'ah, and this is the meaning from what perspective? It's the meaning from the Islamic technical perspective, not the language. So he states, what is intended by bid'ah, it is everything that is introduced from that which does not have a foundation for it in the Sharia, in the Islamic legislation. He states, وَأَمَّا مَا كَانَ لَهُ أَصْلٌ مِنَ الشَّرْعِ يَدُلُّ عَلَيْهِ فَلَيْسَ بِبِدْعَةٍ شَرْعًا وَإِنْ كَانَ بِدْعَ لُغَةً. So he states, but everything that does have a foundation within the Islamic legislation, meaning the Islamic legislation indicates or points to it, then it is not considered a bid'ah in the Islamic technical sense, even if it's considered a bid'ah from the perspective of the language. Even if it's considered a bid'ah from the perspective of the language. Imam al-Shatibi, in his book Al-I'tisam, he states about a bid'ah, الطريقة في الدين مخترعة تضاهي الشرعية يقصد بالسلوك عليها المبالغة في التعبد لله. He says that it is a path as it pertains to the religion that is innovative. It's new. It's a novelty. And it resembles the Islamic legislation. It resembles it in some way. And the intent for traversing upon it is exaggeration as it pertains to being devoted to Allah wa ta'ala. As it pertains to being devoted to Allah wa ta'ala. Now, these two definitions don't contradict each other. But I want to simplify the matter as it pertains to these two definitions. So these two definitions, or bid'ah, is when looking at it and understanding it, you want to look at if the action has four components. Four components. One, hiya muhdatha. It is new. It is something that wasn't present before. It is new. That's the first component that it's going to have. There is no likeness for it that came prior to someone saying or doing it. Two, it directly relates to deen. It directly relates to deen. And nothing else, nothing outside of that. 3, its occurrence is after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After Allah says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum, to the end of the verse. This day I have perfected your religion, completed my favor upon you, and are pleased as a deen for you, al-Islam. It's come after that. It's come after the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's the third component to understanding if something is a bid'ah or not. And then the fourth component, which is very important, that there is a point and or purpose or intent behind doing a statement or action that's considered a bid'ah. What is that point? What is that purpose? What is that intent? To be brought closer to Allah. It's being said or done as an act of worship, being devoted to Allah. These are the four components that if all of them are in place, then you are looking at a statement or an action that is considered a bid'ah in the deen, an innovation in deen. So again, when we take a look at the first point, it's a muhdatha, meaning it has come out of nowhere. It has no example prior to it. No example prior to it. And so this is what bid'ah in the language actually means. That's something that is new, that has nothing that has come like it prior to it. Like Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, He states, "Qul ma kuntu bid'an min ar-rusul." He commands the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say, I am not a bid'an. The asl of the word, ba, dal, ayn, bid'ah. I am not something new. I am not a novelty from amongst the messengers, meaning there were messengers prior to him. I'm nothing new. I'm nothing new from them. I'm not a novelty as it relates to messengership or prophethood. Right? So as a muhdatha, is something that doesn't have an example or likeness prior to it. في الدين خرج من ذلك ما هو غير الدين or ما هو غير الدين. What exits from deen is that which is considered to be not from the deen, from the worldly affairs, from the customs of the people, and thus forth and so on. If it's something that's directly connected to worldly matters, agriculture, and thus forth and so on, other foods, and thus forth and so on, then these are not things that are directly connected to worship. They're not directly connected to worship. Now, in some of those things, you may have a prohibition here and there, but generally speaking, they're not things that are connected to worship. And then it would take place after the death of the Prophet ﷺ. This is wadih, this is clear. And it's done for the purpose of being brought close to Allah, and one being devoted to it's done as a devotion, being devoted as an act of worship to Allah. This is if it's something that's being enacted or something that's being abandoned. And usually when we deal with bid'ah, a lot of times people only focus on things that are being enacted, but don't realize that sometimes you can abandon something and it's considered a bid'ah. If it's for the purpose of being brought close to Allah, and as an act of devotion to Allah, I am abandoning this, being devoted to Allah, being brought close to Allah, to be rewarded by Allah by abandoning this thing. But when looking at that, if we want to explain and make clear certain things, to abandon something and one thinks it's bringing them closer to Allah, what exits from that is abandoning things that are halal due to a harm that may be connected to that thing that's halal. Like, for instance, a person who abandons dates because he may have the type of diabetes that doesn't allow him to eat dates, and it brings about a harm to his body. We know that eating dates is halal. But a person abandons the eating of certain foods because they are harmful to his health. So this isn't an act of worship that he's putting forth. He's abandoning it due to a legitimate reason. He's abandoning it for a legitimate reason. But what if it's a situation where he or she abandons certain types of food and there is no harm to the body? Would it be considered a bid'ah? Not necessarily. We have people that are on what you call a keto diet. And they're trying to lose weight. It's permissible for them to abandon certain foods for that purpose. This type of abandonment doesn't enter into the abandonment that's considered bid'ah. And thus forth, and so on. Another type of abandonment that doesn't enter into bid'ah is when an individual abandons something, being cautious from falling into something that is displeasing to Allah. Or being cautious from bringing about a mafsada, a harm. And we're going to see that in the principle that we're going to take after Maghrib. We're going to go into that a lot. Sometimes something could be permissible, but in a certain circumstance, if it's attempted to be enacted, it can produce a harm. And so in that circumstance, a person leaves it off, being cautious from producing a harm that afflicts or affects himself or the Muslims. That type of abandonment is not what's intended here. Abandoning something because a person's being cautious from falling into the muharramat. And that's seen in the hadith of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir. Where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stated, Al-halal bayyin, wal-haram bayyin, wa baynahuma mushabbahatun la ya'lamuha kathirun min an-nas. He states that the halal is clear. The haram is clear. And between those two things are dubious matters that the majority of the people are unaware of. فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الْمُشَبَّهَاتِ اسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَإِرْضِهِ. So whoever has some caution with these unclear and dubious things, then he exonerates himself as it relates to his deen and his honor. His deen and his honor. وَمَنْ وَقَعَ فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ كَرَاعٍ يَرْعَى حَوْلَ الْحِمَى يُوشِكُ أَنْ يُوَاقِعَهُ. But whoever falls into these doubtful matters, then he is like the one grazing his cattle, and he is on the brink of entering someone else's sanctuary. So the Islamic legislation encourages, stay with this. Look, we're unclear as it relates to that. If it's really a doubtful matter, if it's bringing about this type of questioning and thus forth and so on, look, just leave it off for right now and roll with that which is clear. So without a doubt, that type of abandonment doesn't enter into this, what we're discussing now. Also, what doesn't enter into the type of abandonment that we're discussing now is that which is a direct means to committing an evil. Meaning, without a person doing this thing, he would not be able to do that thing that's considered to be prohibited. Even if the thing that he needs in order, that is a means for him to commit the evil, even if it's ruling outside of that particular circumstance, is permissibility. Even if it's considered something permissible. If in that circumstance it is a direct means that enables one to commit something that's haram, then in that instance, leaving it off, abandoning it, will have a person rewarded with Allah. And it does not enter into the abandonment that we're discussing now. In order for us to understand that, then we take a look at the statement of Allah. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, and do not come near as zina. إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ السَّبِيلِ. It seems like I'm busting up that ayah. I could be mistaking the ayah. But do not come near fornication or adultery, for indeed it is a tremendous immorality and an evil way. In this particular ayah, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala does not prohibit zina alone, but He prohibits the means that can lead to it. And for this reason, touching a woman is prohibited. Gazing at a woman is prohibited. Being isolated alone with a woman, and when we talk about women, of course we all know that are non-relatives that are lawful to be married. Being isolated with a woman is prohibited. And other than that, which would normally be considered to be allowed if in the circumstance it is a means to commit that evil. And this verse is one of the verses that is used where the principle is derived. لا يتم الحرام إلا بشيء فهو حرام. If you cannot complete a prohibited action except by way of some other thing, then that other thing, it is prohibited as well. In that circumstance, it now becomes prohibited. And if you abandon it, you are rewarded in that regard. So these are some of the types of abandonment that don't fall into what we're discussing right now. However, if the abandonment of something is for the purpose of worship to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, and it is or has no basis within the text of the Quran and the Sunnah, then it is this type of abandonment that we're discussing now. Something that Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has made halal, and it's well known that it's halal, but then people abandon it with no command or prohibition from Allah, thinking to be that they're being brought closer to Allah. Now we have an example of this from an authentic narration as muttafaqun alayh. And muttafaqun alayh means what again?
Bukhari and Muslim.
Bukhari and Muslim, both collected by Bukhari and Muslim. See, I'm testing young guys, man. You guys' memory should be sharp, man. All right, I'm testing young guys, all right? Anyway, we have an authentic narration that is collected by both Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim upon the authority of Anas ibn Malik, where he stated, أن نفرا من أصحاب النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم سألوا أزواج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم عن عمله في السير. That a group from amongst the companions of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about his actions when he was in private in his home. And as a result of hearing what the wives told them, some of them said, لا أتزوج النساء, I'm not going to marry women. Some from amongst them said, لا آكل اللحم, I'm not going to eat meat. What they meant by that is they're not going to break their fast. And then some from amongst them said, لا أنام على فراش, that they weren't going to sleep on the beds. What it was intended by that is that they were going to pray all night and not rest at night. So the narrator states, فَحَمِدَ اللَّهُ وَأَثْنَى عَلَيْهِ, that the Prophet praised Allah, glorified Allah ta'ala, commended him, and thus forth and so on. ثُمَّ قَالَ مَا بَالُ أَقْوَامٍ قَالُوا كَذَا وَكَذَا. What is with a group of people that would say this and that? What is with a group of people that would say this and that? And then he stated, فَإِنِّي أصلي وأنام وأصوم وأفطر وأتزوج النساء فمن رغب عن سنتي فليس مني. And then he stated, but I pray and then I rest. I fast and then I break my fast. And I marry women. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. So whoever has disdain for my sunnah, then he is not from me. In other words, even with abandonment of things, you are not going to get closer to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala by abandoning something that is not clearly expressed within the text of the Quran and the Sunnah. All an individual does is place upon himself great burden and difficulty without any reward whatsoever. Staying away from women, meaning lawful wives. Staying away from them is a burden on men. It is. And every man knows that. Every man knows that. And we see this example with the Catholic Church. They've made binding upon themselves the staying away from women. And look at what you have happening and being discovered when molestation of the children of these places, the boys and the girls, and thus forth and so on. This is not something that's bringing them closer to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. So Imam al-Shatibi, he states as it relates to that particular narration, كل من منع نفسه من تناول ما أحل الله من غير عذر شرعي فهو خارج عن سنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says every single individual that prevents himself from indulging in that which Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has made permissible without an Islamic excuse, then he is outside of the sunnah of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the one that acts outside of the sunnah of the Messenger, and from the perspective of worship, huwa al-mubtadi' bi'aynihi, that he is a mubtadi', he is an innovator. He is an innovator. The point that I'm making here is that innovations are not just restricted to enacting something. They're also found in abandonment of things. It's also found in abandonment of things. And this is why the extreme from amongst the Sufis are innovators. Abandoning that which Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala has made permissible and halal with the bid'ah, with the zuhud, a form of zuhud that's considered bid'ah. They literally, anything that has an ounce of luxury, they think that it's incumbent upon them to abandon it, and that's zuhud. And that's bringing them closer to Allah. This is incorrect. Shaykh Muhammad ibn Salih al-Uthaymin, or rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh, he explains zuhud. He says, zuhud is not abandoning that which is harmful to you in this dunya. La. On the contrary, zuhud is abandoning that which will not benefit you in the next life. Now, that which will not benefit you in the next life does not mean abandoning that which is halal. If we want to understand that, let's understand it in this simple way. Is it permissible for a man to own 6 cars? Huh?
Yes.
Yes. This is permissible. A person is not blameworthy for this. He's not falling into the muharramat. Now, is owning 6 cars going to bring a person closer to Allah? No. Because if you have 6 cars, unless you drive in 1 car each day of the week, some of those cars you may not even be driving. You may not even be driving. They're just sitting idle. So how is owning 6 cars bringing you closer to Allah? This is what Shaykh Uthaymeen means. Abandoning that in this dunya that won't bring you closer to Allah. The only way that 6 cars will bring you closer to Allah, you buy 6 cars and you find 4 people. Because let's say you want to keep 2 cars, it's possible for a person. I would encourage people to have a backup vehicle, especially if you're driving a used car. If you can't afford a brand new car, a $20,000 car off the lot with no riba and thus forth and so on, most likely you're driving a used car. And so you want to have a backup car just in case something happens. But if you have 6 cars, only way that's going to benefit you with Allah is if you find 4 people and give them cars. Oh, sister so-and-so is a single sister. She's riding a bus. She has X amount of kids. Oh, this is easy ajr right here. I'll give her a car. Brother so-and-so just hopped out the pen. He's striving to be brought closer to Allah. Halfway house is all the way on the other side of town. He just got his license. I'm going to give him this car so he can make it to the masjid and make it to work. And that's how it'll benefit. That's how it'll benefit. So, moving on. I think my time is just about up, huh? I think my time is. What time is it?
5:36.
And what time does Maghrib come in? 5:36. We prayed at 4 o'clock. Yeah, my time is up. With that, subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. There was more that I wanted to present, but that should be sufficient, inshallah. The next class is after Maghrib. The Maghrib is at what time? It doesn't have the time up there.
6 o'clock, 6:07.
6:07 is 5:30 right now?
All of what you said, 100% make more sense. And you can go through that.
Let me stop this.